At our anniversary party, my best friends for a year-old toddler looked at my wife and said, "Mommy, can we go home now?" The room went silent. My wife turned pale. All the guests turned to stare at me. What I did next made them regret everything. Before we continue, and let US know where you're listening from in the comments. My name is Rex Lord, and I built my empire from nothing. At 38, I own Lord Construction, the most successful building company in our city. Every skyscraper that touched the clouds, every luxury development that reshaped our skyline, they all bore my mark. But success in business came at a price I was too blind to see. Stella Jones became Stella Lord 6 years ago, and I thought I'd won the lottery. She was 28 then, stunning with her auburn hair and emerald eyes, working as an interior designer for high-end clients. We met when she was hired to design the penthouse of one of my developments. I was smitten from day one. "You have exquisite taste, Mr. Lord," she had said, running her fingers along the marble countertop I'd specifically imported from Italy. "Call me Rex," I replied, unable to take my eyes off her. "And I hope my taste in women is just as good." She laughed, a sound like wind chimes that made my chest tighten. Within 3 months, I proposed. Within 6, we were married in a ceremony that cost more than most people's houses. I spared no expense because I thought she was worth it. Patrick Bradley had been my best friend since college. We'd started our careers together, him in finance, me in construction. When I needed capital for my first major project, Patrick helped me secure the loans. When he needed connections for his investment firm, I provided them. We were brothers in everything but blood. Patrick married Dawn Sweeney 2 years after I married Stella. Dawn was quiet, reserved, almost the opposite of Stella's vibrant personality. They had a daughter, Cara, who was now 4 years old and the apple of her father's eye. Our social circle was tight-knit. Every weekend brought gatherings, dinner parties, or family barbecues. Stella and Patrick always seemed to get along well, bonding over their shared love of fine wine and cultural events. I was happy my wife and best friend enjoyed each other's company. It made our group dynamic effortless. Looking back, I realized I was so focused on building my business empire that I missed the signs. The late nights Stella claimed were client meetings. The way she and Patrick would whisper together at parties, then separate when I approached. The phone calls that ended abruptly when I entered the room. I trusted them both completely. Trust was my weakness and their weapon. Our 6th anniversary was approaching, and I wanted to celebrate in style. I rented out the entire top floor of the Grandview Hotel, the same place where we'd held our wedding reception. I invited everyone who mattered to us, business associates, friends, family. Nearly 100 people would witness our enduring love. "Are you sure about such a big party?" Stella asked while we planned the event. She seemed nervous, fidgeting with her wedding ring. "Of course," I said, pulling her close. "I want the world to know how lucky I am to have you." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Sometimes I think you love me too much, Rex." "Impossible," I replied, kissing her forehead. "There's no such thing as loving you too much." If only I'd known then how prophetic her words would prove to be. The day of our anniversary party, I woke up feeling like a king. The penthouse suite was decorated exactly as Stella had envisioned. Cascading white roses, golden lighting, and elegant table settings that screamed sophistication. I'd hired the best caterers in the city and a string quartet that had played at the governor's daughter's wedding. "You've outdone yourself, darling," Stella said as she finished applying her makeup. She wore a stunning black cocktail dress that hugged her curves perfectly, her hair swept up to showcase the diamond necklace I'd bought her for our anniversary. "Only the best for Mrs. Lord," I replied, adjusting my platinum cufflinks. "Tonight, everyone will see what a lucky man I am." The guests began arriving at 7. My business partners, David Wise and Alan Larson, came with their wives. My mother, Lorraine Hanson Lord, flew in from Florida specifically for the occasion. Stella's sister, April Berger, brought her latest boyfriend, a pretentious art dealer named Miguel McClure. Patrick and Dawn arrived fashionably late, as usual. Patrick looked sharp in his navy suit, his blonde hair perfectly styled. Dawn wore a simple blue dress that complemented her modest personality. Little Cara bounced between them in a frilly pink dress, her pigtails bouncing with each step. Rex, my man. Patrick embraced me with his usual enthusiasm. Congratulations on 6 incredible years. Thanks, brother, I replied, meaning it. Here's to 60 more. The evening flowed smoothly. Champagne bubbled in crystal flutes, conversations hummed with laughter, and the string quartet provided the perfect ambience. I gave a heartfelt speech about love, commitment, and the woman who'd made me complete. Stella blushed beautifully as everyone applauded. But as the night progressed, I noticed subtle tensions. Patrick seemed unusually attentive to Stella, refilling her wine glass before it was empty, lingering near her during conversations. Stella appeared flustered whenever they interacted, her usual confidence replaced by nervous energy. Dawn, typically quiet, seemed even more withdrawn than usual. She barely touched her food and kept glancing between her husband and my wife with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Everything all right, Dawn?" I asked during a quiet moment. She startled as if I'd caught her doing something wrong. "Oh yes, Rex. Everything's fine. Just tired from chasing after Kara all day." But her eyes told a different story. There was sadness there, resignation, as if she was carrying a burden too heavy for her slight shoulders. Around 10 o'clock, as the party reached its peak, I stood to make another toast. I wanted to thank everyone for celebrating with us, to share my gratitude for the life I'd built. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, raising my champagne flute. 6 years ago, I married the woman of my dreams. That's when it happened. Little Kara Bradley, who had been playing quietly near the dessert table, suddenly ran towards Stella. Her little legs carried her straight to my wife, and she tugged on Stella's dress to get her attention. The room was buzzing with conversation, but somehow in that moment, the acoustics aligned perfectly. Maybe it was fate, or maybe it was justice, but little Kara's sweet, innocent voice carried across the entire room, as clear as a bell. "Mommy," she said, looking up at Stella with her big blue eyes, "can we go home now? I'm getting sleepy." The effect was instantaneous and devastating. Every conversation stopped mid-sentence. Crystal champagne flutes froze halfway to lips. The string quartet, sensing the shift in atmosphere, trailed off in the middle of their piece. Stella's face went from rosy celebration to ghostly pale in the span of a heartbeat. Her champagne flute slipped from her nerveless fingers, shattering against the marble floor in a crystalline explosion that sounded deafening in the sudden silence. Every single person in that room, friends, family, business associates, acquaintances, turned to stare at me. Some faces showed confusion, others dawning comprehension, and a few displayed the kind of morbid fascination people have when witnessing a car accident. Patrick lunged forward, his face a mask of panic. "Kara, sweetheart, come to Daddy," he said, his voice cracking with desperation. But the damage was done. Little Kara, completely oblivious to the chaos she'd created, looked around at all the adult faces staring at her and began to cry. "I want to go home," she wailed, reaching up towards Stella again. "Mommy, why is everyone looking at me?" The innocence in her voice was like a knife twisting in my chest. This child, whom I'd watched grow from a baby, whom I'd bought Christmas presents for, whom I'd loved like she was my own niece, she had just called my wife Mommy. Dawn Bradley stood frozen near the bar, tears streaming down her face. Her small hands covered her mouth, but I could see the devastating truth in her eyes. She'd known. Maybe not everything, but she'd known something was wrong. My mother, Lorraine, broke the silence first. "Rex, dear," she said carefully, "perhaps we should—" "No." My voice cut through the air like a blade. I was surprised by how calm I sounded, how controlled. Inside, a volcano was erupting, but years of high-stakes business negotiations had taught me to keep my poker face. Nobody leaves. I set my champagne flute down on the nearest table with deliberate precision. My movements were slow, measured, like a predator circling wounded prey. The entire room watched my every gesture. "Stella," I said, my voice carrying across the silent space, "would you care to explain why Patrick's daughter just called you Mommy?" Stella's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Tears were flowing freely now, mixing with her carefully applied makeup and creating dark streaks down her cheeks. Rex, it's not. She's just confused. Is she? I turned my attention to Patrick, who looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Patrick, my oldest friend, my brother. Is Kara confused? Patrick straightened his shoulders, and for a moment, I saw a flash of the man I'd known and trusted for over a decade. But then his resolve crumbled. Rex, please, let me explain. Oh, I think the explanation is quite clear, I said, walking slowly around the room. My guest parted before me like I was radioactive. My wife has been playing house with my best friend. My best friend has been sleeping with my wife. And their 4-year-old daughter, not Dawn's daughter, but their daughter, just exposed them in front of everyone who matters in our lives. The mathematical precision of it was almost beautiful in its horror. Kara was 4 years old. Stella and I had been married for 6 years. Patrick and Dawn had been married for 4 years. The timeline painted a picture clearer than any confession. Dawn collapsed into a chair, her quiet sobs the only sound in the room. Little Kara, still crying and confused, clung to Stella's leg while Stella stood paralyzed. You know what the truly pathetic part is? I continued, my voice gaining strength. I trusted you both completely. I defended your honor. Patrick, when people said you were too ambitious, I bragged about my loyal wife, Stella, to anyone who would listen. I loved you both more than life itself. I stopped directly in front of them, close enough to see the terror in their eyes. But here's what you didn't count on. Here's what you forgot in all your sneaking around and lies and betrayal. I smiled, and I could see several guests actually step backward at the expression on my face. I don't forgive. I don't forget. And I never, ever let anyone make a fool out of Rex Lord. The promise in my voice wasn't a threat. It was a declaration of war. And as I looked around the room at the faces of my guests, I realized I had just been given the greatest gift of all, witnesses. Everyone would remember this night. Everyone would remember what they had done to me. And everyone would remember what I was about to do to them. The party was over. The reckoning was about to begin. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw little Kara's innocent face calling my wife Mommy. I saw the pitying looks from my guests. I saw the smirks that some people try to hide. Most of all, I saw the betrayal in its full, ugly glory. Stella had locked herself in our guest bedroom after the party ended. She tried to explain, to justify, to minimize. Her words were a pathetic symphony of it just happened, and I never meant for this, and I love you, Rex, I really do. I'd listened to exactly 30 seconds of her pleading before walking away. What was there to discuss? The facts were simple. My wife had been sleeping with my best friend for at least 5 years. They had created a child together. They had made me the laughingstock of our entire social circle. By sunrise, I was sitting in my home office with a cup of black coffee and a yellow legal pad, making lists. I built a multi-million-dollar empire by being methodical, strategic, and ruthless when necessary. Those same skills would serve me well in what came next. List 1. Assets and vulnerabilities. List 2. Allies and enemies. List 3. Information needed. List 4. Objectives and timeline. My phone had been buzzing all night with calls and texts. Some from concerned friends, others from gossip-mongering acquaintances who wanted first-hand details of the drama. I ignored them all except one. Rex. My mother's voice was gentle when I finally answered her call. How are you holding up, sweetheart? I'm fine, Mom, I said and meant it. I felt clearer than I had in years. Do you want me to stay longer? I could cancel my flight. No need. I have everything under control. There was a pause. My mother had raised me alone after my father died when I was 12. She knew me better than anyone. Rex, whatever you're planning, please be careful. Don't let this destroy the good man I raised. Don't worry, Mom. I'm still the same man. I'm just done being naive. After we hung up, I made my first strategic call. Randall Britton Investigations came the gravelly voice of the best private investigator in the city. Randall, it's Rex Lord. I need your services. Rex. Jesus, I heard about last night. Half the city's talking about it. You okay? I'm perfect. How quickly can you put together a comprehensive investigation? I want to know everything. Finances, communications, travel records, the works. For your wife and Bradley? Give me 72 hours, and I'll have their entire lives mapped out for you. Do it. And Randall? I want to know about the child, too. Medical records, birth certificate, paternity, everything. You got it, boss. This is going to cost. I don't care what it costs. Next, I call my attorney, Floyd Webb, who specialized in high-asset divorces. We'd gone to law school together before I switched to business. Rex, I've been expecting your call, Floyd said without preamble. I'm assuming you want to discuss divorce proceedings? Among other things. Can you be at my office in 2 hours? I'll be there in 1. My third call was to David Wise, my business partner, and the closest thing I had to a friend now that Patrick had revealed his true nature. Rex, man, I don't even know what to say about last night, David said. Jesus, that was brutal. I need to ask you something, and I need complete honesty. Did you know? There was a long pause. I suspected something was off. Patrick had been asking a lot of questions about your schedule, your travel plans. And Stella, she seemed different lately. More secretive, but I never imagined. Who else suspected? Alan might have. Maybe a few others. Rex, I'm sorry. I should have said something. No, you shouldn't have. You did exactly what a good friend does. You minded your own business and gave them the benefit of the doubt. That's what loyalty looks like. What do you need from me? Your support, and your silence about whatever I'm planning. You have both, brother. Whatever you need. By noon, I had the skeleton of my plan in place. Floyd had outlined the legal strategy for the divorce. With Kara as proof of Stella's adultery, I could pursue a fault-based divorce that would minimize her settlement significantly. The prenuptial agreement I'd insisted on would protect most of my assets. But legal victory wasn't enough. They had humiliated me publicly, destroyed my trust, and made me a laughingstock. A quiet divorce and a check wouldn't balance those scales. I wanted them to suffer the way I was suffering. I wanted them to lose everything they valued, the way they'd made me lose mine. I wanted their betrayal to cost them more than they'd ever imagined possible. The beauty of my plan was its simplicity. I wouldn't have to fabricate evidence or commit crimes. I would simply use their own choices, their own weaknesses, against them. I would apply pressure in precisely the right places until their carefully constructed lies collapsed under their own weight. Patrick's investment firm was built on reputation and trust. His clients were wealthy individuals who demanded discretion and reliability. What would happen to his business when word spread about his character? When potential clients learned he'd betrayed his best friend and business partner? Stella's interior design career depended on referrals from satisfied clients, many of whom were wives in our social circle. How many decorating contracts would she receive when everyone knew she was a homewrecker who'd carried on a 5-year affair? And then there was Dawn, poor, loyal Dawn, who had stayed married to a cheating husband and helped raise his illegitimate child without complaint. She deserved better than Patrick Bradley. She deserved the truth, the whole truth, and the freedom to make her own choices. Randall Britton delivered his preliminary report exactly 72 hours later, and it was even more devastating than I'd anticipated. He spread the photographs, documents, and digital evidence across my office conference table like a dealer laying out cards. Your wife and Bradley have been careful, but not careful enough, Randall said, lighting a cigarette despite my no-smoking policy. I didn't stop him. They've been meeting at the Riverside Inn every Tuesday and Thursday for the past 18 months. Always the same room, 314. They pay cash, use fake names. He slid a stack of photographs across the table. Stella and Patrick entering the hotel separately, then together, kissing in the parking lot. Patrick's hand on the small of her back as they walked toward the elevator. But here's where it gets interesting, Randall continued. The affair goes back much further than the hotel meetings. I tracked their credit card records, phone calls, and travel patterns. Best I can tell, this started about 6 months after you got married. My coffee cup cracked in my hand. 6 months. They've been lying to me for over 5 years. The child's birth certificate lists Patrick as the father. But here's the kicker. Dawn's name is on it as the mother. Looks like your wife gave birth, and they immediately transferred custody to make it look like Dawn's kid. How is that legal? Probably isn't, But if Dawn signed the papers willingly, Randall shrugged. Maybe she thought she was saving her marriage. Maybe she genuinely wanted to raise the kid. Either way, it's fraud on multiple levels. He showed me more evidence. Financial records showing Patrick had been funneling money from his investment firm to pay for Stella's extravagant shopping habits. Hotel records from business trips where they traveled together while I thought Stella was visiting her sister. Phone records showing thousands of calls and texts between them. There's more, Randall said, stubbing out his cigarette. Bradley's been skimming from his clients to fund this lifestyle. Nothing huge, a few percentage points here and there, spread across multiple accounts. But it adds up. I estimate he's taken about $200,000 over the past 3 years. Now, that was interesting. I've been planning to destroy Patrick's reputation, but if he'd been stealing from clients, he'd destroy himself. Can you prove the embezzlement? Give me another week, and I'll have documentation that would make the FBI weep with joy. Perfect. Do it. And Randall, I want you to dig deeper into Dawn's situation. I need to understand exactly what she knew and when she knew it. That evening, I called Dawn and asked her to meet me for coffee. She sounded terrified but agreed. We met at a small cafe across town, away from our usual haunts. Dawn looked like she'd aged 10 years in 3 days. Her eyes were puffy from crying. Her hands shook as she lifted her coffee cup, and she seemed to be bracing for another devastating blow. Dawn, I want you to know that I don't blame you for any of this, I began. You're as much a victim as I am. She started crying immediately. Rex, I'm so sorry. I should have told you, but I couldn't. How long have you known? Since before Kara was born, she whispered. Patrick told me everything when Stella got pregnant. He said he loved her, but he loved me too, and he begged me to help him keep his family together. And you agreed to raise their child as your own? I thought if I was understanding, if I was patient, he'd eventually choose me. And Kara, she's innocent in all this. She needed a stable home. My heart broke for this woman. She'd sacrificed her dignity, her happiness, and her marriage to preserve a lie that was never going to work. Dawn, I need to ask you something, and I need complete honesty. Are you prepared to testify about what you know? About the fraudulent birth certificate, about Patrick's admissions, about everything? She looked up at me with eyes full of fear and hope. You're going to expose them? I'm going to do more than expose them. I'm going to make sure they face consequences for every choice they've made. But I need your help. What do you need me to do? I spent the next hour outlining my plan. Dawn would continue to act normally around Patrick, but she would document everything, conversations, phone calls, financial records she could access. Most importantly, she would help me prove that Kara was biologically Stella and Patrick's child, not hers. What about Kara? Dawn asked. I love her like she's my own daughter. I can't let her get hurt. Kara will be protected. In fact, she'll be better off when this is over. Children deserve to know the truth about their parents, even when that truth is ugly. As we parted ways, Dawn grabbed my arm. Rex, promise me something. Promise me that when this is over, Patrick will finally face real consequences. I've been covering for him, lying for him, sacrificing for him for 4 years. I'm tired of being the only one who pays for his choices. I promise you, Dawn, when I'm finished, Patrick Bradley will wish he'd never met either of us. While Randall gathered more evidence and Dawn documented Patrick's behavior, I began the delicate work of social engineering. My goal wasn't just to expose the affair. It was to systematically dismantle the lives they'd built on lies. I started with Stella's business. Her interior design firm, Elegant Spaces by Stella, depended entirely on referrals from satisfied clients. Her biggest advocates were the wives in our social circle, women who trusted her with their homes because they trusted her character. I didn't badmouth Stella directly. I didn't have to. I simply let the story tell itself. Rex, how are you holding up? Asked Bertha Hilton, wife of one of my biggest clients, when she called to check on me. I'm managing, Bertha. It's just difficult, you know? Finding out that the person you trusted most in the world was living a double life. I can't imagine. We all thought Stella was such a devoted wife. That's what made it so shocking. The lies, the deception. It makes you wonder what else wasn't real, you know? The conversation continued naturally, but I could hear the wheels turning in Bertha's mind. By the end of the week, Stella had received cancellation calls from 3 major clients who suddenly decided to go in a different direction with their renovations. Patrick proved even easier to undermine. His investment firm's success was built on personal relationships and trust. His clients needed to believe he was a man of integrity who would safeguard their financial futures. I had lunch with Salvatore Juarez, who had several $1 million invested with Patrick's firm. "Sal, I need to ask you something in confidence," I said over steaks at our usual restaurant. "If you discovered that someone you trusted with your money had been living a lie for years, would that affect your confidence in their financial judgment?" "Absolutely. Money management is about trust, Rex. If a guy can lie to his best friend for 5 years, what's he hiding from his clients?" That's what I was thinking. I mean, I'm not saying Patrick is stealing or anything like that, but the judgment, the character issues. Jesus, Rex, are you thinking of pulling your investment? I'm considering all my options. By Friday, 3 of Patrick's major clients had scheduled meetings to review their portfolios. Word was spreading through our tight-knit business community that Patrick Bradley might not be the reliable family man everyone thought he was. But the real masterstroke came when Randall delivered his final report on Patrick's embezzlement. "It's worse than I initially thought," Randall said, spreading new documents across my desk. "He's been skimming for over 4 years, not 3. Total amount is closer to $400,000. He's been using shell companies and offshore accounts to hide the money. Can you prove it? I have bank records, forged documentation, the whole thing. This isn't just theft. It's money laundering, tax evasion, and securities fraud. He's looking at federal prison time." Perfect. But I wanted to control the timing of Patrick's downfall. I wanted him to understand exactly why his world was collapsing. "Hold off on contacting the authorities," I told Randall. "I want to give Mr. Bradley a chance to come clean first." That weekend, I invited Patrick to meet me in my office. I told him I wanted to discuss business matters without the complications of our personal situation. He agreed, probably hoping to salvage some professional relationship from the wreckage of our friendship. Patrick arrived looking haggard. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his expensive suit wrinkled. The confident man I'd known for over a decade was gone, replaced by someone who looked hunted. "Rex, thank you for agreeing to see me," he said, extending his hand. I ignored it. "Sit down, Patrick. We have a lot to discuss." I let him squirm for a moment before sliding a folder across the desk. "Open it." His hands shook as he lifted the cover. Inside were photographs of him and Stella at the hotel, copies of financial records showing the embezzlement, and a DNA test confirming that Kara was his biological daughter. "Jesus Christ," he whispered. "Rex, I can explain." "Explain what?" "That you've been stealing from your clients to pay for hotel rooms where you fuck my wife? That you've been laundering money through shell companies to hide your theft? That you forced your wife to claim another woman's child as her own to cover up your affair?" Patrick's face went white. How did I find out?" "I hired professionals, Patrick. People who specialize in uncovering the truth that liars try to hide." I stood up and walked around the desk, looming over him. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to return every penny you've stolen from your clients. You're going to dissolve your business and turn yourself into the authorities. You're going to give Dawn a generous divorce settlement and full custody of Kara." "Rex, please. I'm not finished." My voice could have cut glass. "You're also going to publicly admit your affair with my wife. You're going to acknowledge that Kara is your daughter. And you're going to do all of this within the next 72 hours. And if I refuse?" I smiled. "Then I'll do it for you. I'll turn this evidence over to the FBI, the SEC, and every news outlet in the city. Your clients will learn they've been robbed by the man they trusted with their life savings. Your wife will learn the full extent of your lies. Your daughter will grow up knowing her father is a convicted felon." Patrick collapsed back in his chair. "You're destroying my life." "No, Patrick, you destroyed your life. You destroyed my life. You destroyed Dawn's life. I'm simply making sure there are consequences for your choices." He left my office a broken man. Within 24 hours, I received a call from Dawn. "He confessed everything," she said, her voice stronger than I'd heard it in years. "He's returning the money, dissolving the business, and turning himself in. He also agreed to the divorce terms you suggested. How are you holding up? Better than I expected. For the first time in 4 years, I feel like I can breathe. One down. One to go. Stella held out longer than Patrick, but her resistance was born of desperation rather than strength. She'd lost 3 major clients by the end of the first week, and word was spreading through our social circle like wildfire. The woman who had built her reputation on trust and elegance was now seen as a manipulative homewrecker who'd carried on a years-long affair. She tried everything to win me back. Flowers appeared at my office daily. She left tearful voicemails begging for forgiveness. She even showed up at my construction sites, causing scenes that embarrassed both of us in front of my workers. "Rex, please," she pleaded during one particularly pathetic display at the Grandview Hotel project. "I made a mistake. I know I hurt you, but we can work through this. People have affairs all the time and save their marriages." Affairs. I laughed, the sound harsh enough to make several workers stop and stare. "Stella, you had a 5-year relationship with my best friend. You had his child. You lied to me every single day for half a decade. That's not an affair. That's a double life. I love you, Rex. I've always loved you. No, you love my money. You love my status. You love the lifestyle I provided. But you never loved me. If you had, you wouldn't have been able to betray me so completely." The breaking point came when Floyd Webb called with news that Stella was trying to contest the prenuptial agreement. "She's claiming duress and fraud," Floyd explained. "Says you coerced her into signing it, and that the terms are unconscionable. Can she win? Not with the evidence we have. But she's hired Kevin Todd from Morrison & Associates. He's expensive and aggressive. This could get ugly." That evening, I found Stella waiting in my driveway when I came home from work. She was sitting on the hood of her BMW, still beautiful despite the strain of the past 2 weeks. For a moment, I remembered why I'd fallen in love with her 6 years ago. Then I remembered little Cara calling her Mommy, and the moment of weakness passed. "We need to talk," she said, sliding off the car. I unlocked the front door without acknowledging her, but I didn't lock it behind me. She followed me into the living room, where we'd shared so many happy moments. "I know you hate me," she began, "but I need you to understand something. What Patrick and I had, it wasn't planned. It just happened. Nothing just happens for 5 years, Stella. You made a choice every single day to betray me. You're right. I made terrible choices. But Rex, I was lonely. You were always working, always building your empire. Patrick was there when you weren't. So this is my fault? No, that's not what I meant." She was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. "I'm trying to explain, not excuse. I know I have no excuse. I poured myself a scotch and didn't offer her one. Why are you here, Stella? I want to make a deal. I'm listening. I'll accept the divorce terms and the prenup. I won't contest anything. In exchange, you don't destroy my business or my reputation completely. Let me rebuild somewhere else, start over. And why would I agree to that? Because despite everything, we had 6 good years. Because you loved me once. Because destroy me won't undo what I did." I studied her face, looking for any sign of genuine remorse. All I saw was calculation, self-preservation masquerading as regret. "You know what, Stella? You're absolutely right. Destroying you won't undo what you did. But it will serve as a warning to the next person who thinks Rex Lord is a fool to be taken advantage of." Her tears stopped instantly, replaced by something harder. "So that's it? You're going to ruin me out of spite." "Not spite, justice. You and Patrick made me a laughingstock in front of everyone who matters to me. You stole 5 years of my life. You made me complicit in your lies without my knowledge or consent. Those actions have consequences." "Fine," she said, standing up. "If you want a war, you'll get one. But remember, Rex, I know things about you too. Business practices that might not look so good under scrutiny." I set down my scotch glass and looked at her with genuine amusement. "Are you threatening me? I'm simply pointing out that everyone has secrets. Not like yours, sweetheart. And here's the difference between us. I don't care if my secrets come out. I built my success honestly, and I can defend every decision I've ever made. Can you say the same?" She stared at me for a long moment. perhaps finally understanding that the man she'd married was not the man she was facing now. "You've changed," she said quietly. "No, Stella. I've just stopped pretending that love means being a doormat. I've stopped confusing kindness with weakness. You helped me understand the difference." She left without another word. The next morning, Floyd called to tell me she'd withdrawn her challenge to the prenuptial agreement. Patrick's downfall was swift and merciless. Once he began cooperating with authorities, the full scope of his crimes became clear. The FBI froze his assets, his business was shuttered, and his clients learned they'd been systematically robbed by the man they'd trusted with their financial futures. The local media picked up the story, and it became a cautionary tale about white-collar crime and personal betrayal. Respected investment advisor admits to years of embezzlement to fund affair, read the headline in the city's largest newspaper. Patrick was sentenced to 6 years in federal prison and ordered to pay full restitution to his victims. His professional licenses were revoked permanently. The man who had once managed millions of dollars in investments was now facing bankruptcy and disgrace. Dawn filed for divorce immediately after Patrick's confession. With the evidence I provided, she received a generous settlement that included their house, half of their remaining assets, and full custody of Kara. More importantly, she received the truth about her husband and the freedom to build a new life. "I'm thinking of going back to school," she told me over coffee a month after Patrick's sentencing. "Maybe becoming a social worker. I want to help other women who've been in situations like mine." "That sounds perfect for you," I said, meaning it. Dawn had emerged from her ordeal stronger and more self-assured than I'd ever seen her. "What about Kara? How is she handling everything?" "Better than expected. She's resilient, and she doesn't really understand the adult complications yet. She just knows Daddy went away for work and won't be back for a while." "Will you tell her the truth eventually?" Dawn nodded. "When she's old enough to understand. She deserves to know who she really is, but she also deserves a childhood free from adult drama." Stella's destruction was more subtle but equally thorough. Word of her affair spread through our social circle like a virus, and her client base evaporated almost overnight. The women who had once competed for her services now viewed her as a threat to their own marriages. She moved out of our house and into a small apartment across town. Her BMW was repossessed when she couldn't make the payments. Her luxury wardrobe was sold off piece by piece to pay for basic living expenses. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she tried to establish her business in other cities, but our social circle had connections everywhere. A few phone calls from concerned friends ensured that her reputation followed her wherever she went. 6 months after our anniversary party, I ran into her at a grocery store. She was dressed in jeans and a simple sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. Without her designer clothes and professional makeup, she looked younger but also defeated. "Hello, Rex," she said quietly. "Stella." I nodded politely but didn't stop walking. "How are you doing?" "Very well, thank you." "And you?" "I'm managing. I've been thinking about what you said, about consequences and justice. I think I understand now." I stopped and looked at her directly. "Do you?" "Yes. You weren't just punishing me for the affair. You were punishing me for thinking you were too weak to fight back, for assuming you'd just accept it and move on." "Partially, yes. I'm sorry, Rex. Not just for the affair, but for underestimating you, for thinking I could make a fool of you without consequences." I studied her face, looking for manipulation or calculation. Instead, I saw something I'd never seen from her before: genuine humility. "Thank you for saying that," I said finally. "But it doesn't change anything. I know. I'm not asking for forgiveness or a second chance. I'm just sorry." She walked away, and I never saw her again. 2 years after the anniversary party that changed everything, I was a different man living a different life. The betrayal had been devastating, but it had also been liberating. I no longer wasted energy on people who didn't deserve my trust. I no longer confused kindness with weakness or love with naivety. Lore Construction had thrived in the aftermath of my personal drama. Instead of being damaged by the scandal, my reputation had been enhanced. I was seen as a man who didn't tolerate betrayal, who dealt with problems decisively, who could be trusted to follow through on his word. Those were valuable qualities in the business world. I'd also discovered that I genuinely enjoyed being single. Without the constant emotional drama of managing Stella's needs and insecurities, I had more time for my work, my friends, and my own interests. I took up sailing, learned to play guitar, and traveled to places I'd always wanted to see. Dawn and I had become close friends, bonded by our shared experience of betrayal and recovery. She'd finished her social work degree and was now helping other women escape abusive relationships. Kara, now 6, was thriving in school and showed no lasting effect from the upheaval in her early life. She asked me about her biological parents yesterday. Dawn told me during one of our regular dinners. I told her the truth in age-appropriate terms. She seems okay with it. How do you feel about it? Relieved, actually. Secrets are exhausting. The truth is much simpler, even when it's complicated. One evening, as I was reviewing blueprints for a new commercial development, my assistant knocked on my office door. "Mr. Lord, there's a woman here to see you. She says it's about the Riverside project." I looked up to see an attractive brunette in her early 30s, dressed professionally but not expensively. She had intelligent brown eyes and a confident bearing that immediately caught my attention. "I'm Carolyn Donaldson," she said, extending her hand. "I'm an architect, and I have some ideas about your Riverside project that I think you'll find interesting." As she spread her plans across my conference table, explaining her innovative approach to mixed-use development, I found myself genuinely impressed by her knowledge and creativity. She was passionate about her work, articulate about her vision, and completely focused on professional excellence rather than personal charm. "These are impressive," I said when she finished her presentation. "Very innovative. Why aren't you working for one of the big firms?" She smiled. "I prefer to be independent. I've seen what happens when architects compromise their vision for corporate politics. I'd rather work with clients who value quality over quantity." "And you think I'm that kind of client?" "I think you're the kind of man who appreciates competence and honesty. Your reputation suggests you don't tolerate mediocrity or deception." We talked for another hour about the project, but also about architecture, business, and life in general. She was divorced, no children, focused on building her practice. She seemed genuinely unimpressed by my wealth and status, caring only about whether I could recognize good work when I saw it. As she packed up her plans, I made a decision that surprised me. "Ms. Donaldson, would you be interested in having dinner sometime? Not business, just dinner." She paused in her packing and looked at me directly. "Are you asking me on a date, Mr. Lord?" "I believe I am." "Good. I was hoping you would." "Yes, I like that very much." As I watched her leave my office, I realized something important. I was ready to trust again. Not blindly, not naively, but carefully and deliberately. I'd learned to distinguish between people who deserve my trust and people who simply wanted access to my resources. The anniversary party that had destroyed my marriage had also freed me to find something better. Sometimes the worst betrayal leads to the best opportunities. 6 months later, I proposed to Carolyn Donaldson on the deck of my sailboat as we watched the sunrise over the harbor. She said yes, and I knew with complete certainty that I'd found the right partner this time. Our wedding was small and intimate, just close friends and family. No dramatic reveals, no hidden agendas, no lies disguised as love. Just two people who had chosen each other with full knowledge of who they were and what they wanted. As I watched Carolyn walk down the aisle toward me, I thought about the journey that had brought me to this moment. The betrayal, the pain, the anger, the revenge. They had all been necessary steps in becoming the man I was meant to be. Rex Lord didn't forgive betrayal, and he didn't forget lessons learned. But he also didn't let the past poison his future. He learned, he adapted, and he built something better from the ashes of what had been destroyed. The boy who had trusted too easily was gone. In his place stood a man who understood the true value of loyalty, honesty, and love. A man who would never again mistake kindness for weakness or confuse love with being a fool. And that man was finally, truly happy. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, Check out the recommended videos on screen, and I'll see you there.